Our series begins with a girl named Song Rong, who is on a plane heading to Shenzhen, China to pursue her dream, which we will discover as you continue watching, dear viewer, so be patient with me. Anyway, Song is on the phone with her mother, lying to her by saying she's sitting in the garden watching the river. When she arrives at the airport, she calls her cousin, Chong, and scolds him because he was supposed to be waiting for her at the airport to pick her up. However, he apologizes, saying he was very busy. While they are talking, she notices an elderly man collapsing on the ground at the airport. She quickly rushes to help him, and a crowd gathers around. Then comes Dr. Wen Kun, who administers first aid and determines that the elderly man has suffered a stroke. He asks Song to call an ambulance, but she is lost in thought, dear viewer, completely mesmerized by Dr. Wen. The ambulance arrives, takes the old man away, and Dr. Wen leaves with them. However, he accidentally drops his pen on the ground. When Song sees it, she runs after him. Not because of the pen, of course, but, well, because of the pen. Later, Dr. Wen receives a phone call from a colleague at the hospital urging him to come quickly for an important surgery. That's when we learn that Dr. Wen is a highly skilled neurosurgeon. Meanwhile, Song rushes home to change her clothes and then hurries to a law firm called Darren, where she is late for her first day of training. When she arrives, the supervisor gathers the trainees and explains how things work in the firm. She then assigns them different legal departments, explaining that only 1 out of the 5 trainees will be officially hired if they succeed in their assigned roles. Song is assigned to the dispute resolution department at a hospital. The other trainees mock her because it is known to be a difficult department filled with problems, which we will learn about later, dear viewer, so stay tuned. Later, we see Song arriving at her new home, which she absolutely loves. She calls her cousin to thank him for helping her find such a great place to rent. He apologizes once again for not picking her up at the airport. Then, in a sudden scene transition, we are introduced to a stunningly beautiful woman stepping out of a luxury car looking incredibly wealthy. She calls Song. Turns out she's Song's best friend. They meet, exchange warm greetings, and the friend gifts her a bunch of household essentials, including a duck for the bathroom. Now, dear viewer, maybe you should go get yourself a duck too. Why should she be the only one? After that, the friend takes Song on a tour around the city to show her around and have some fun. We see Dr. Wen cooking and preparing 2 delicious dishes, one for himself and one for his dog. Back to Song and her friend. As they talk, her friend gives her a charm to attract love. She asks her if she has a boyfriend or not. Song drifts into thought for a moment and remembers Dr. Wen. She tells her friend she doesn't have one. Just as they were talking about Dr. Wen, they see him nearby walking his dog. Later, Song and her friend go to a restaurant to eat. When they leave, they encounter Dr. Wen's dog, get scared, and accidentally drop their food. When Dr. Wen arrives, he apologizes for what happened, but the 2 girls are too distracted to respond immediately. Once they snap out of it, Ching tries to get Dr. Wen's number to give it to her friend Song, but he refuses, pays for their food, and leaves. The next morning, Song arrives at the hospital to start her job. The director explains her role. She is responsible for resolving disputes between patients and doctors. He gives an example, pointing to an elderly man. The issue is that the patient believes his doctor neglected him and wants an apology, while the doctor insists he did nothing wrong and discharged him early because his health had improved. Song's job is to resolve such conflict. She then goes to speak with the doctor involved in the dispute. When she sees him, she doesn't recognize him at first and asks for his name, but he avoids her and pretends to be someone else, saying he's too busy. Later, she discovers from the nameplate on the wall that he is indeed the doctor she was looking for. She tries to get information about the issue from him, but he refuses to help and tells her he is too busy with patients to deal with such matters. In an attempt to talk to him, she pretends to be a patient and books an appointment at his clinic. However, this only annoys him further and he still refuses to cooperate. A nurse later tells Song how skilled and admired Dr. Wen is, especially among female colleagues, and how busy he always is. She also mentions that what Song did, booking an appointment just to talk, would have seriously annoyed him. Realizing this, Song considers apologizing. Meanwhile, Dr. Wen talks to his uncle, complaining about a dispute he had with his wealthy grandfather. We learn that Wen's grandfather is very rich, but Wen chose to open a bookstore and live independently, not wanting to rely on his family's wealth. Later, Wen stands under a tree, reminiscing about his childhood with a girl he loved. They spent a lot of time together, but she eventually had to leave with her family. He promised to wait for her under this tree until she returned, and indeed that's what he did every day of his life. Suddenly, as it starts to rain, he notices a girl standing under the tree. He thinks it's his childhood friend returning as promised. When he approaches her, he realizes it's Song. He turns to leave, but she apologizes for what happened earlier. He doesn't seem to care, but when she tells him her name, he freezes, realizing she is the very girl he had been waiting for all these years. Overcome with emotion, he hugs her in joy. However, she is completely confused. He tries to find out if she remembers him as he remembers her, but she has no memory of him at all. This deeply upsets him. She eventually leaves, and we see him later, training in boxing with his cousin, still thinking about her. Song then visits her friend's restaurant and is amazed by how luxurious it is. As they talk, Song finally opens up about her day and shares how difficult her job turned out to be. She also tells her about her strange encounter with Dr. Wen. Ching suggests that maybe fate brought them together. She encourages Song, who is feeling down. Later, Song tries to motivate herself to keep going at work. She remembers her father and reassures herself, saying, "I will be better, and life won't defeat me." She finds out that the power is out, which means it's a bad morning for her. Meanwhile, Dr. Wen is talking to her cousin, trying to gather information about Song. He asks if there is anyone in her life, and her cousin replies, "No, she has no one." Suddenly, Wen receives a call from Song, asking him to come and help her because the power is out and she doesn't know what to do. Her cousin arrives at her house first, and when she opens the door in the dark, she hugs him. "But who is it?" you ask. Yes, it's Dr. Wen she ends up hugging by mistake, since she couldn't see properly. Typical, right? If it were her cousin, would she have hugged him too? She gets flustered afterward, and her cousin goes to fix the electricity. As they sit together, her cousin says, "I'll go get some stuff," basically giving them some alone time. What a considerate guy. Song talks to Wen and finds out that he owns the apartment. Her cousin rented it from him. Wen takes advantage of the situation and asks her to save his number in case she ever needs anything, but she declines, saying there's no need. However, Wen is determined to get her number, so he says, "Weren't you looking for a solution to that patient's dispute? I'll summarize it for you to help with your work, and I'll even prepare a detailed report." Song gets excited about this, but then he adds, "Give me your number so I can send it to you on WhatsApp." What a smooth move. As soon as he leaves, he texts her, saying that if she wants the report, she should meet him the next morning in the park. She shows up in the morning expecting the report, but instead he hands her workout clothes and says, "Let's go for a run first, then you'll get the report." Song is annoyed but goes along with it anyway. They run left and right, reminiscing about old memories. After finishing, Song is exhausted and out of breath. She says, "Okay, now give me the report." But Wen smirks and says, "I said I'd give it to you, but I never said when." What a tease. He then suggests, "How about you spend a day as a doctor with me? That way you'll understand how exhausting our job is." Song agrees just to get the report. Later, the chief doctor asks questions about neurological diseases, but no one, not even Song's cousin, can answer. However, Song comes up with an innovative solution, surprising everyone. But when they find out she's just a mediator from the legal department, they start making fun of her. As they walk, they meet a very beautiful doctor named Asterisk Bless You. Yes, that's her name. She's a successful and well-known doctor, just like Wen. Ching approaches her and seems to know her well, as if she understands her personality perfectly. They continue their hospital tour, visiting patients. Song notices that Wen answers all the patients' questions in the same way because most of their concerns are similar. Meanwhile, Ching's restaurant is booming with business. She even tries to place chairs outside near the bookstore next door. However, the bookstore owner is inside, locked up, and he slides a note under the door, rejecting her idea. Song then has lunch with Wen and tries to bring up the report again, but he keeps changing the topic, just to keep her around longer. Suddenly he gets an urgent call and has to rush to the operating room. Back to Ching, she goes ahead with her plan anyway and places the chairs outside. But the bookstore owner, who turns out to be Wen's uncle, comes out to scold her. He tries to reason with her politely, saying it's not okay and that she should remove the chairs, but she refuses, standing her ground. So what does he do? He brings out his dog and places it in front of the bookstore. The customers get scared and run away. He then says a few fancy words in formal Korean, completely confusing Ching, who doesn't understand a thing, probably because she's not the brightest. Later, Song and Ching meet up, venting about their frustrating days. Song learns that the sports outfit and shoes Wen got her are rare and hard to find. This makes her realize that maybe Wen is actually being kind to her. Feeling guilty, she decides to go apologize. But when she arrives, Wen is still in the operating room. He takes longer than expected, so she waits and waits until she eventually falls asleep. When Wen finally comes out, he finds Song sleeping, exhausted from waiting. Seeing her like this reminds him of memories from their childhood, how she used to fall asleep just like that. Wen sits beside her and falls asleep for a while too. After some time, her cousin arrives and finds them sleeping like little birds. He takes a picture of them and then leaves. When they wake up, Song feels awkward, so she quickly suggests they go eat somewhere since Wen has been in the operating room all day. They head to her friend's restaurant, where her friend is talking to her boyfriend. He tells her to stop working and go home, but she insists she's happy working because she doesn't want to rely on her rich father. She reserves a nice table for them, and they start talking. Song asks Wen how he manages to handle such a tough job, so he explains brain surgery to her. He also tries to gross her out so she'll lose her appetite, but she's too hungry to care and eats anyway. However, when they both start eating, they realize the food is terrible and way too spicy, but they don't say anything so they don't hurt her friend's feelings. Meanwhile, Wen gets lost in his thoughts, remembering the time when she had eaten spicy food just to encourage him, even though she normally hates it. After a while, Wen gives Song his jacket because it's getting cold, and they start walking. Along the way, they spot the patient who had a dispute with Wen, sitting outside eating. Song is confused and asks how he's eating out when he was supposedly on a hunger strike. Wen explains that he's been secretly sending food to him through her cousin because, deep down, he knows the patient is not at fault. The man only wants to stay in the hospital because he has nowhere else to go, so he pretends to be on a hunger strike. Later that night, Song tries to write the report herself and sends it to Wen for review. He tells her it's fine and even tweaks a few things before sending it back. He then tells her, "Go to bed early. Good night." She replies, "Good night. And you, dear viewer, good night too." Oh wait, you thought we were done? Not yet. Finish the summary first, then sleep all you want. The next morning, when Song arrives at the hospital, she notices that everyone is staring and whispering about her. She's confused and tries to find out why. After some digging, she learns from the nurses that a picture of her has gone viral online. She immediately confronts her cousin, assuming he must be the one who leaked it. But he explains that last night, when he was sneaking food to the patient as usual, a nurse caught him. To cover up the situation, he quickly sent her some photos of the doctor, but by mistake he also sent the one of Song and Wen sleeping together. She goes to Wen and asks him to handle the situation, as now everyone assumes they're in a relationship. She insists that he needs to make it clear to people that they have nothing between them, that she's just a lawyer, and he's just a doctor. Wen feels hurt by her words, but has no choice but to agree. Later, he speaks to the nurses about the picture and tells them, "I have loved Song since childhood, and I still love her. I've been waiting for her for a long time." The nurses assume he's joking and conclude there's no real relationship between them. Ironically, though, he was actually telling the truth, but they misunderstood him. While walking through the hospital, Song spots the patient who had issues with Wen. He receives a call and is asked to meet someone outside. Curious, Song secretly follows him. When he arrives, the man he meets tries to convince him to leave the hospital and come to his clinic instead, promising him comfortable beds and high-quality care, all for a very low price. Of course, it's all a scam. The man is only trying to deceive the patient and take his money, but unfortunately, he manages to persuade him. As the patient leaves with the scammer, Song quickly jumps into a car and follows them to see what's really going on. Then suddenly, our dear editor cuts to a scene in a supermarket. She buys a few things at the supermarket and overhears some customers talking about her restaurant. They say her food is terrible, and the only reason they go there is because they're being paid. Hearing this, Chung gets furious and confronts them, demanding to know what's going on. Ranga, who is sitting there eating, explains to her that it means her father has been paying customers to eat at her restaurant. Devastated, Chung immediately calls her father to confront him about it. Meanwhile, Song arrives at the shady clinic where the patient was taken. The place looks terrible, with no proper care or hygiene. She starts taking pictures, but the owner notices her and demands that she hand over her phone. Just then, she gets a call, which gives her an excuse to run away. Later, Chung returns to the restaurant, feeling deeply hurt, especially after her father scolded her. She gets drunk and tries to call her boyfriend for support, but he ignores her. Feeling even worse, she drinks more and starts banging on the restaurant wall in frustration until she breaks it. She then stumbles into a bookstore where someone scolds her, but instead of responding, she starts blaming herself, venting about how she's a failure. The person tries to comfort her, but nothing seems to help. At the same time, Dr. Wen is also frustrated after hearing what happened to Song and the scam clinic she discovered. When she asks why he looks so upset, he admits he was really worried about her. Anything could have happened to her there. Just then, Song gets a call from Chung, who needs help. She and Wen rush to her, take her home, and Wen stays to help. Unfortunately, while assisting, Chung throws up all over his clothes, forcing him to take a shower and change. Later, she talks to him about how she feels like a failure, always trying but never succeed. Wen reassures her that she's actually very talented. She just doesn't see herself clearly. His words deeply move her because no one has ever told her that before. While they're talking, she collapses on the floor and asks him to get her some clothes from the closet. But just then, her mother calls, and when she answers, she accidentally turns on the video call. Panicking, she hides Wen in the closet. Her mother, suspicious, notices a figure hiding and asks if someone is there. But since she only sees part of the person, she assumes it's one of Chung's female friends and lets it go. Her mother then asks her to explain something in English, so Song starts tutoring her over the call. Meanwhile, Wen is struggling inside the closet, feeling suffocated, but he refuses to come out to avoid causing her trouble. Finally, when Song finishes the call, she remembers Wen is still stuck inside. She opens the closet, but he can barely stand because his legs have gone numb. As soon as he steps out, there's a knock at the door. It's her cousin. The cousin is shocked to see Dr. Wen in such an awkward situation. Later, Wen leaves with him in the car and they start talking about Song. Wen finds out that Song has a list of qualities she wants in a man. Curious, Wen asks to see the list, but when the cousin refuses, Wen kicks him out of the car. The next morning, Song makes breakfast for herself and Chung before heading to work. On her way, she looks up hospital bed prices online, the same ones the scammer was trying to sell to the patient. She realizes they are ridiculously overpriced. When she arrives at the hospital, it's time for the patient's dispute meeting with Dr. Wen. The patient insists that the hospital must refund his money. But Wen tries to explain that he has been correctly diagnosed with a brain tumor and that there was no mistake. Despite Song also defending Wen, the patient refuses to listen. Just then, Wen receives a call from another patient thanking him for his treatment and gifting him a silk scarf in appreciation. Later, Song sees the patient talking to the scammer again. She approaches him and tries to convince him that the bed deal is a scam. It's impossible for a hospital bed to cost that much. But the patient gets angry and insists on buying it anyway. She continues trying to reason with him, saying that he needs to stay in the hospital and not waste money on a fake deal. However, the patient finally reveals the truth. The scammer is actually his son. With that, he walks away, leaving Song stunned. Chung wakes up feeling anxious about going to her restaurant, fearing that no customers will be there. When she arrives, her worst fear comes true. Not a single customer has shown up. To make things worse, a transportation company is removing the chairs from her restaurant and shutting it down. She finds out that her father ordered this, which leaves her even more devastated. Adding insult to injury, she receives a message that her boyfriend is at a hotel. When she goes there, she finds him with another woman, one of her former employees. Meanwhile, Ranga is at the same hotel, waiting to meet with a publishing house representative to discuss his book. However, the representative mocks his work, calling it outdated and unsuitable for modern readers, humiliating him in the process. At the same time, Chung is also getting humiliated by her boyfriend, who tells her that he never loved her and was only with her for her father's money. He goes even further, calling her a failure and an idiot, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Devastated, Chung bursts into tears. When she tries to throw a glass of water at him, she accidentally spills it on herself instead, making her look even more pathetic. Ranga witnesses the scene and feels bad for her. Frustrated, Ranga lashes out at the publishing house representative before chasing after Chung's ex-boyfriend. He locks him in a hotel room before returning to comfort Chung, who is still crying. Trying to cheer her up, he lends her his jacket. When she asks about a wound on his arm, he casually tells her that a dog bit him, adding humor to the situation. Meanwhile, Dr. Wen is looking for Song but can't find her. He notices her laptop and realizes she went to the scam clinic. The scene shifts to Song, who sneaks into the clinic's payment room and sabotages the machine to prevent the scammer from taking patients' money. She then uses the microphone to expose the clinic's fraudulent practices, warning patients not to fall for their tricks. The scammer and his men search for her, and when they catch her, they lock her in a room. Just as they are about to attack her, Dr. Wen arrives in time and takes the hit meant for her. The police then arrive and arrest the scammers. Afterward, Wen scolds Song for putting herself in danger without informing him. He tells her she should only focus on her job and stop taking unnecessary risks. Upset, she retorts, asking why he didn't just mind his own business and why he saved her in the first place. She demands to know what she means to him, but he is left speechless. Meanwhile, Ranga is still upset about the rejection from the publisher, but Chung encourages, saying she finds his book interesting. Later, the patient from the clinic suffers a brain hemorrhage and needs immediate surgery. Wen rushes to perform the operation, and Song anxiously waits outside the OR. The surgery is successful, and Wen tells Song she can relax since the patient is now in intensive care. That night, Song returns home to find Chung attempting to cook, but she accidentally starts a fire. Song quickly intervenes and they sit together. Song feels guilty about the patient's condition, but Chung reassures her, reminding her that she did her best and that the patient's situation was due to his own negligence. Chung also shares her heartbreak over her ex-boyfriend's betrayal. The next morning, Song goes for a run and unexpectedly meets Wen, who jogs alongside her. They chat, and just as Wen is about to confess his feelings, he hesitates and holds back. Later, Song goes shopping for hospital supplies and Wen accompanies her. She buys food, tissues, and other necessities for the patient. The scene then shifts to Song's parents, where she argues with them about wanting to be independent. Her father reminds her of all the money he spends on her, but she defiantly cuts up her credit card and throws away her car keys before storming off. Meanwhile, Ranga is working out when he receives a call from a publishing house. They tell him they are willing to publish his book, but only if he pays them since he comes from a wealthy family. This angers him even more. On her way home, Song struggles to walk after giving up her car. When she sees Ranga on his bike, she imagines him as her knight in shining armor coming to save her. However, he refuses to help at first. She insists and hops onto the bike with him, but they are soon stopped by a traffic officer who finds them. Song doesn't have money to pay, so she convinces Ranga to cover it. Afterward, she asks him to complete his good deed by taking her home, but he gets frustrated and leaves the bike for her, choosing to take a taxi instead. Song finally arrives at the hospital and sits beside the patient, preparing the items she bought for him. She tells him that from now on, she will take care of him like a daughter. The patient, moved by her words, listens silently without her noticing. After walking for a long time, Chung reaches her restaurant feeling exhausted and starving. She starts eating Ranga's food, while he watches her in shock. When he realizes she has no money, he lets her eat in peace. The next day, Song attends a meeting with her internship supervisor at Darren's company. All the interns are present, each sharing their achievement. When it's Song's turn, she struggles to speak because she hasn't accomplished anything noteworthy. Feeling discouraged, she watches as the other interns celebrate. One of them mocks her, making her feel even worse. She ends up drinking heavily. Later, in her drunken state, she runs into Wen and hugs him tightly, shocking him. Wen takes her home by car while she drunkenly praises him, calling him a successful man and expressing how happy she is to know him. She falls asleep during the ride and he has no choice but to take her home. The next morning, Song wakes up horrified as she remembers her drunken behavior. Embarrassed, she heads to work. When she tries to buy coffee, she finds that someone has already paid for it. The same thing happens when she orders food. She receives a note from the mysterious benefactor revealing that he is her new neighbor. Even when she takes a taxi, she discovers he has covered the fare. Confused, she tells her friend about the strange situation. After meeting Win, she tries to apologize for what happened yesterday, explaining that it occurred because she was drunk, but he doesn't believe her. He insists that she was fully aware of her actions when she hugged him. He pushes her to talk more, and she's about to admit that she loves him, but she manages to hold back. They later find out that the patient has regained consciousness and asks to see them. They visit him, celebrate together, and he asks them to take a picture. This is what happens. Things begin to improve for Song, even receiving a message from her supervisor informing her that she passed her first month with honors. That night, when she arrives home and is about to exit the elevator, the lights suddenly go out and she gets scared. She notices boxes next to her door and realizes they are for her new neighbor. When she opens the boxes, she finds a skeleton, which terrifies Song. She runs back to her apartment and quickly calls her friend, hoping she can come to help. Chang reassures her, telling her she's on her way and to meet her downstairs. Song goes out to take the elevator, but when she hears a noise, she thinks it's a burglar and goes out to confront him. When the lights come back on, she sees it's Win, who lives in the apartment next to hers. Her friend arrives and sees them together, telling Song that this is definitely fate bringing them together. When they sit down at the house, Song asks Win why he moved there suddenly. He tells her it's because the apartment is closer to the hospital. But this isn't true, as the hospital is far away from where he lives. Chang mentions that Win is probably avoiding her because he loves her and moved there because of her. She tries to convince Song that he's in love with her and that it's not just a coincidence that they keep running into each other. The next day, Song goes to work and meets Win, who asks her to go to work together. He even goes with her on the bus, even though he has a car. When they arrive at work, Win asks if she wants to have breakfast with him, but she quickly refuses, recalling her friend's words. She meets her cousin Shin, who tells her that he's been accepted into the hospital competition, and he lets her know that Win will be on their team. Later, at work, the manager tells Song that she'll be responsible for the team and any legal issues that may arise. Win tries to get closer to her, but she avoids him, saying she has a law class. He insists that she walk with him while he works because he's too busy to sit with her. We later see her on her way to return his money and ask if he loves someone because her friend keeps thinking about him. He doesn't say anything but calls Win to ask if he has a girlfriend. Win is happy because he knows that Song is concerned about him. Later, Win goes to his grandmother's house to check on her and tells her that Rang now has a girlfriend, so she should stop calling him. Song congratulates Rang on having a girlfriend, but Rang asks Win to help him because he lied to his grandmother. That night, Win takes his dog for a walk, and after a while, they return home. The dog bumps into Song as she's leaving her apartment, and Win insists on taking her to the hospital. He calls ahead to prepare a room for her. At the hospital, Win gets an x-ray for Song, and even though everything is fine, he lies and says she needs follow-up care, claiming he's the one who should look after her. She refuses and returns home, telling him that she's fine. When she gets to her apartment, she finds that the electric lock is broken. She asks Win if he has a spare key, but he lies and says no. He invites her to sleep in his apartment instead of on the street. She has no choice since it's late and no one is around to fix the lock. As she lies in bed, she wonders if he truly loves her because he's so concerned about her. Suddenly, he enters her room and confesses his love for her. She's shocked. The next day, she wakes up only to realize that it was all just a dream. She scolds herself for dreaming about Win. She goes outside to check if Win is in the apartment but doesn't find him. As she leaves, she's surprised to see him standing in front of her, and he tells her that he fixed her door. Afterwards, Win gives Song the new passcode to her apartment. She enters and feels incredibly nervous. While she's thinking about him, there's a knock at the door, and it turns out it's Win. He brought food because he knew her fridge was empty. He prepares breakfast for her while she feels embarrassed, telling him that she should pay for the food, but he refuses. Instead, he asks if she'll have breakfast with him every day, so that way she's repaid for the food. They sit down to eat and she's still tense. When Win tries to get closer to check her wound, she stops him, and he asks if she's afraid of him. She insists she's not, and he then says, "Then you must love me." She denies it, but he tells her that if she wants to be sure of her feelings for him, she'll go through 5 stages. First, deny love. Second, quick anger. Third, try not to show you care. Fourth, jealousy. And finally, you'll know the last stage later. Later, at her restaurant, Song is asked if she has heard from her old friend, but she says no one has sent her any message. This is when she learns that Song posted a message online asking for Benji, who is actually her old friend, but she doesn't know this yet. Later, we see Win admiring a skull and commenting on its beauty. He's caught by Song's cousin, who asks what he's doing, and Win responds, "Admiring beauty." He realizes it's Shin and tells him to go ahead and do his research. Later, Song goes to deliver papers to Win, informing him of his rights and responsibilities as a doctor. Afterward, she sees him with his patient, and she notices him looking at her with admiration. When she realizes he noticed her, she gets embarrassed and hands him the papers with a note to focus on the important points. Meanwhile, Chung is working in her restaurant and realizes they've run out of meat. She asks Rang to help her by going to the market to buy more. After a bit of persuasion, Rang agrees. In the market, Rang buys the meat she will cook with and teaches her how to tell the difference between a reliable vendor and a scammer. They return to the restaurant, and on their way back, she promises to pay him back once the restaurant starts making a profit. He jokes that he'll die before that happens. That evening, Song and Win meet to test his legal knowledge. Win does well enough that Song is surprised by how much he knows. He tells her that since she made him prove his skills, she must reward him. She agrees to think about it and tells him she'll give him an answer by tomorrow. They both return to their apartments, happy and thinking about each other. The next day, Song notices that Win isn't at work. Later, she finds out that he's on a business trip with her cousin and left her a message asking her to take care of his dog. When she gets home that night, she goes to Win's apartment, feeds the dog, and takes it for a walk. The dog runs off, and she chases it until she's out of breath. Win watches from a distance. Later, Song returns to her apartment with the dog, but is surprised to see that Win's dog was with him all along. She tells him to take care of the dog, since she's not interested. At night, Song prepares for bed, and receives a message from Win saying he's met the dog's owner and is going out to dinner with him. He thanks her for saving the dog. The next morning, he leaves breakfast at her door and heads to work. At the same time, she learns that the hospital has awarded them a bonus for winning the competition. She suggests they use the bonus for a camping trip. At that moment, they hear from Suok, who was supposed to participate in the competition but couldn't, and he offers to pay for the camping trip. Everyone agrees, and when they suggest the idea to Song, she refuses to join them. Win is puzzled by her behavior because she continues to ignore him. Chang, noticing Win's attention towards Song, feels frustrated and leaves. Win later talks to Song, trying to understand why she's treating him this way. She tells him they are just colleagues and that their relationship should remain professional. We see her handing out flyers to attract customers to her restaurant, but no one is paying attention. They just take the flyers. She then goes to Rang and asks for advice on how to attract people to the restaurant. She asks him to come with her and pretend to be a customer, but he outsmarts her by making her buy economics books from him. When she returns to the restaurant, her assistant tells her that it was supposed to be the other way around. She was supposed to sell to him, but he tricked her into buying from him. Meanwhile, Wen goes to Chang's restaurant and asks for a favor, which is for her to supervise their meals during the camping trip. However, there's one condition. Song must join them. She begs Song to come along as she wants to earn money. Song signs a contract that would be void if she doesn't show up. We see them together in the car, with his wife, her cousin, and Wen tagging along. They finally arrive at the campsite, where they are told they'll gather for dinner, and the rest of the day is free for anyone to do what they want. Of course, Wen tries to get close to Song the entire time, but she keeps avoiding him. They play with remote-controlled airplanes, and Song seems to be more focused on her. He later goes to her when he notices her avoiding him and asks her what's wrong. Song tells him that they need to maintain boundaries, and their relationship should stay within limits. The girls sleep in one tent and the boys in another. Later, Song, still awake, thinks about the conversation she had with Wen when he asked her to meet by the tree by the lake because he wanted to tell her something. She goes outside to meet him, but Chang calls out to her and asks her to go with her instead. They take a walk, and during that time, Chang admits that she cares about Wen and is afraid he might disappear from her life. Song reassures her that people we love during nights with two moons never disappear. We then flash back to when Song was young and her father had passed away. He comforted her, telling her that if he died on a night with two moons, he would never be forgotten. Wen is waiting for Song under the tree, ready to make her a paper moon to cheer her up, but just as he's about to give it to her, he gets a call and finds out that everyone is looking for them. Song is still talking to Chang and admits to her that she loves Wen, but asks her not to stand in their way. They finally return to the group, and Wen is confused when Song refuses to hold his hand. The next day at the hospital, Chang looks stunning as she meets Wen. She invites him to lunch, but he refuses. However, when she mentions that it's about Song, he agrees to go with her. Chang overhears them and tells Song, who asks Chang what name she should give when Wen joins them for lunch. When they all sit together, Song becomes upset when she sees Wen and Chang getting closer, so she leaves. Chang then lies to Wen when he asks her about Song's feeling, claiming Song told her to stay away from him because she likes someone else. She explains that she liked him even back in college and joined his department because of him. Wen, however, says that he respects Song as a colleague but is confused by her actions. Later, Song's mom and aunt visit Chang at the hospital and are surprised to find Song there. Her mom faints, and when she wakes up, Song lies, telling her that she is a doctor at the hospital. Song then takes her mom home and removes all the lawyer books from her apartment so her mom doesn't find out. When her mom sees the apartment's affordability compared to other rental prices, she's impressed and even starts thinking of Wen as a potential suitor for Song. Song's mom is pleased that he's a good guy who even cooks for her sometimes. The aunt reassures her that Wen is still single. Meanwhile, Chang asks Wen to help her with some crates at the restaurant. When she accidentally breaks his guitar, they have a fight. She says she won't leave until she fixes it, and Wen regrets his outburst and promises to make it up to her when she returns. Back with Wen, he's cooking for Song and her mom, and they're all pleased with the meal. Song's mom asks Wen about his family and then asks if he loves anyone. Wen admits that he does, describing the girl as short, with short hair and a bit stubborn, and Song's mom guesses it's the girl in yellow. Wen confesses that he loves Song, and while Song is embarrassed and tries to avoid it, her mom is hopeful and warns him to never hurt her. Song later takes her mom back home because she was supposed to spend the night with Wen. Meanwhile, Chang returns the guitar to the shop, only to find Rang has reopened his restaurant and started serving customers. She apologizes and reconciles with him. Later, Song receives a message from someone claiming to be from a bank, asking to meet her at the restaurant. The next day, she's surprised to find Wen at her place, and later she goes to Chang for help in preparing a nice outfit for the meeting. She dresses up beautifully for the occasion. Wen is impressed by her and wants to know where she's going, but she refuses to tell him. He later figures it out when she accidentally lets it slip that she's meeting with a banker. Wen becomes worried because he knows that the address is related to a scam. He hurries to find Song, who is sitting with the person claiming to be her boyfriend. However, Song realizes he's lying when she notices that he doesn't even remember how they met. She leaves, but he attacks her. She defends herself, and when Wen arrives, he sees her striking him. Wen says, "I should have worried about him, not you," and takes her away. On the way, Wen asks if she misses her boyfriend, but Song asks him to drop her off because she's upset and wants to walk alone. Wen decides to accompany her and tells her that he knows of a spot by the tree where he once promised to wait for her, revealing that he's the Bing she's been looking for all this time. Song is shocked, but Wen explains how they met and shares the story of the two moons. He then confesses that he loves her, not the man she thought he was. They return to their homes, parting on good terms, both happy that they finally met. Song looks at herself in the mirror and recalls the scar on her forehead, which she got when she fell during a school race and landed on one of Wen's sweets, injuring herself. That night, when Song goes to bed, her mother wonders why she's so happy, and Song explains that she met her childhood friend again. The next morning, Song and her mom are having breakfast. Song tells her mom that she needs to return to Australia because staying here is affecting her mentally. Her mom reassures her, saying she was planning to leave anyway. Later, Song goes to the supermarket to buy ingredients to cook, where she meets Wen. He learns that she's returning to Australia tomorrow, and he wants to cook her one last meal before she leaves. Meanwhile, Chang is at her restaurant, waiting for Rang to come out so she can talk to him. When he does, she tries to get his attention, but he tells her that he's busy preparing to go rock climbing. She insists that she's great at the sport and asks him to take her along. He agrees, but it becomes clear that she's not very good at it, much to her embarrassment. As they continue, she starts to take more photos of Rang, and it's evident that she's starting to like him. In the hospital, Song is exhausted and Wen offers to massage her neck. They grow closer, and he jokes about them not moving and asking him to consider himself invisible. At Song's house, her mother decides to do a deep cleaning before leaving. While cleaning, she finds some legal documents related to Song's work at a law firm and realizes her daughter has been lying to her. She calls Song at work to tell her that she has discovered the truth. She tells her she's going to quit her job with Chang, the manager. Song rushes to stop her mom from ruining her future. She arrives at the office and her mom demands to speak to Chang. He takes her to his office, where her mom hands him Song's resignation letter. Chang asks her if Song knows about her intentions, as he's aware that Song worked hard to get to this point. Song's mom says it doesn't matter what Song wants. It's about what's best for her. However, Chang refuses to accept the resignation, unless Song agrees to it herself. We learn that Song's mom is afraid her daughter will suffer from stress and die like her father. Chang reassures her that not everyone is the same. Song finally arrives at the office, takes her mom, and they leave together. But they have an argument, and Song tells her mom to stop interfering in her life because she's grown up and knows what she wants. Of those two words upset her mom, and she walks away, leaving. Wen arrives at the house and tells Song not to be upset with her mom because she's just worried about her. He asks her to convince her mom to calm down and continue in her law career. When Song gets home, she finds that her mom still hasn't returned and her phone is off. However, she gets a message from Chang saying that her mom is with him. Wen goes to her and tries to bring her back home, but Song refuses. Wen talks to her, trying to understand the reason behind her refusal. She tells him that her father was a lawyer and due to his job, he was always distant from them. In the end, he died from an illness caused by stress. Wen convinces her that she's not like her father and can handle the pressure. He also promises to take care of her. He manages to make her reconcile with her mom, and they go back home together. That night, Song apologizes to her mom for what happened and promises that she won't hide anything from her anymore. They both finally reconcile, and everything returns to normal. However, her mom refuses to travel until she feels reassured about Song. Song tells her not to worry, as she's with Wen now, but she secretly sends Wen a message to confirm that they are together. The next morning, Song and Wen meet at the door and pretend that they're a couple because her mom is watching them. Wen takes the opportunity to stay close to Song the whole time, even video calling her when they're eating. He feeds her, and Song, of course, feels embarrassed by the people around them. After work, they leave together and find Song's mom outside, who gives them movie tickets. She tells them to go watch the film since she booked tickets for them. They go and pretend to be a couple, with Song's mom watching them from behind. Song tries to convince her mom that they are in a relationship now, After the movie, they exit together, relieved that Song's mom is no longer behind them. Wen decides to confess his love to Song, but she tells him that she's not ready for a relationship because she has exams. He challenges her, saying that if she passes, she'll be his girlfriend, and they'll stop pretending. She agrees because she already likes him but is pretending otherwise. When Song returns home, her mom asks how the outing went. Song tells her that she wasn't with Wen, but her mom isn't buying it. Later, when Song is finishing her work, she finds that her device is broken and realizes that her mom is behind it. Her mom asks her to go to Wen's place to work on his device and says it's fine for her to stay late. Song goes because she has to submit her report the next day. Wen teases her about her appearance and asks if he looks good enough to sit next to her, but she's embarrassed and closes the door on him so she can focus. The next morning, Song wakes up to find Wen at her house, preparing breakfast. Her mom makes her sit next to him, happy to see them together. She even takes a picture of them to show the neighbors who call her daughter single. Later, Song goes to the law firm and asks Chung to join them for dinner at their house, but he refuses. He says he would prefer to invite the whole team to celebrate their training, and asks Song to find a good restaurant for them. It's clear that Lin doesn't like Song because Chong seems to be interested in her. Song calls her friend to prepare a fancy dinner, excited to make a great meal. She decides to ask Rang for help since she's not good at cooking. However, when she arrives, Rang's mom is there, and she asks him to come home with her and forget about the bet he made with his father. He refuses. She tells him that if no customer comes in within 10 minutes, he'll have to go home with her. Chang overhears them and realizes that Lin is just pretending for the sake of her job. But his mom notices Lin's interest in her son and is happy that someone loves him. She encourages him to follow his dream, but advises him to think about Lin, who has feelings for him, and to forget the past. After his mom leaves, Chang helps Lin and becomes the cook. She says this is his way of returning the favor for helping her earlier. The rest of the team arrives and everyone sits down to dinner except for Lin, who's still late. The girls try to ask Chang if he likes Lin, but Lucy, his assistant, says that he only cares about his work. Lin arrives and criticizes the restaurant to upset Song. She tells them, "Good thing you waited for me," and orders food. However, Lucy informs her that they've already eaten and that if she wants something, she should choose it from the fridge. Lin picks her food and goes to give it to Rang, telling him that if she doesn't like it, she'll give a bad rating for the food. She's clearly trying to get closer to Chang, but he ignores her and is focused on Song. Wen arrives at the location, and Chang calls out to Song to meet him, but Lin insists on being with her and tells her to stay away from Chang. However, Chang stops Lin from entering the kitchen and tells her that he knows what kind of person she is. Lin holds her stomach in pain, and Chang thinks she might be faking it, but soon everyone else feels the same stomach pain. They all get rushed to the hospital. We learn that they all got food poisoning from the spoiled shellfish, except for Song and Chang, who had the meat. Lin scolds Song, accusing her of being careless and ruining their important meeting for tomorrow. Chang apologizes to everyone, admitting that it was his mistake and promises to make it up to them. He goes back to the restaurant to clean up, feeling sad. While cleaning, Lin accidentally breaks a cup and injures her finger. Rang, who's helping her, gets worried and tells her to sit down while he finishes cleaning, but she cries, telling him she's a failure and not cut out for this job. That night, Rang takes her to his room to rest. She wakes up after a few hours and finds her friends cleaning up the restaurant. She thanks them for supporting her. The next day, Song submits her reports to Chang to make up for her mistake. Chang informs her that the interview with the lawyer has been rescheduled for another day. We see Chang after the restaurant has been closed and cleaned. He tells Lin they need to find out the cause of the food poisoning. They investigate the restaurant and discover that the cheap shellfish was the source of the poisoning. And meanwhile, Song has a successful interview, and everyone is impressed with her work. Chang decides to hire her as his secretary. Rang and Chang then visit the shop where Lin bought the shellfish and managed to record evidence. They show the video to the police and the vendor is arrested. Lin later tells Song that she has fallen in love with Rang and plans to make him fall in love with her. Song then receives a message informing her that she has passed the interview and has been chosen for the assistant position. She's overjoyed and heads home to tell Wen that she succeeded. When they see each other, they're happy, and her mom is also thrilled when she sees them together. At that moment, Song decides to travel. Wen takes her to the airport, promising to take care of her. The next day, Wen takes her to work, as it's her first official day on the job. He's attentive and even brings her food. She tells him she will meet him later that evening for dinner, making it their first official date. However, Chung informs her that they need to travel to Shanghai for a case, so Song apologizes to Wen explaining she won't be able to meet him for dinner. Wen understands the situation. Later, Song successfully handles the case in Shanghai, and everyone praises her work. Afterward, Chang takes her to a pet shop, where she learns that he loves animals and even has a cat. Song comments that she thought he was a tough person with no emotion. Afterward, Chang takes her back to the hotel. Song tries calling Wen, but he hasn't been responding to her messages all morning. When she calls him, he tells her he's exhausted from work and needs to sleep. Song feels upset, thinking that he's ignoring her. But then, the door to her room knocks, and to her surprise, it's Wen. She's overjoyed, and Wen asks her to get dressed because he's taking her out. He takes her to a restaurant where he used to work, as it was his first ever patient. They continue to walk around the city, talking and having fun. Later, they return to the hotel, and Wen tells her that he'll be leaving the next day for work. Song wakes up the next morning, but Wen isn't beside her because he's already on a flight back to the city. He calls her before takeoff and lets her know he's on his way. At the hospital, Wen asks Chang to transfer to the anatomy department to learn from him. Before Wen leaves, he tells everyone that he's inviting them to his house to share some important news. We see Song, who has arrived in the city with Chang, who's going to drop her off. But then he gets a phone call, so she leaves him and takes a taxi home. When she finally arrives, she knocks on the door and says, "I missed you. Look, I got here quickly." Wen replies, "Wait, I have a surprise for you." And she finds all her friends from the hospital there. Wen invited them to let everyone know that he and Song are officially in a romantic relationship, even her cousin, who had thought Wen had forgotten about her and fell for someone else. We then see Reng and Chang in the library, where Chang is helping Reng with his work, and they're getting closer. It seems like Reng is starting to fall for her. However, while going through his things, she finds a CD with a video of him with his girlfriend. When Reng sees her, he gets angry and kicks her out of the library, but when she refuses to leave, he storms off. She follows him to apologize and eventually makes up with him. They sit down and talk about the past. Wen and Song, who were walking around the same area, see them, and they bet that Chang will be able to make Rang fall for her. The next day at work, everyone notices how skilled Song is, but Chang is distracted by her, not focusing on his own work. After finishing, Song heads to Wen to spend time together, but an emergency situation comes up and they need him for an operation. He tells her to go ahead, understanding that he's always in demand for surgeries. Once the operation is over, Song tries to talk to Wen, telling him that she loves him, but that she knows he loves Song and wishes them happiness. When Wen gets back, he finds her asleep, but notices that her face is swollen. He takes her to the doctor and learns that she has an infected tooth. Meanwhile, Rang is with Chang, and he gives her a gift, but she insists on paying for it, which upsets her because she realizes that Rang is still angry with her. She returns to her home, determined to go to his place to eat and make things right. Wen agrees to take care of her as he promised her mother. Later, Song's mother visits Wen's house to check on her and gather information about Rang, hoping to help Song win his heart. She manages to get Rang's mother's address to meet her. The next day at work, everything is normal, but during lunch, Chang joins her and notices that he's getting closer to her, so one of the employees takes a picture of them together. He posts it on the company's social media with the caption, "I love her." Song continues to work with Chang until late, and she calls Wen to let him know she'll be late. Wen waits for her outside until he grows tired and goes to get something. He doesn't see her leave with Mr. Chang, but later, when he comes back, he sees her office light on. He receives a message from her saying that Mr. Chang had taken her home. Feeling jealous, Wen goes to meet them, and they all take a walk together. Chang is thinking about Song, who is practicing what she learned at work. The next day, Song enters Chang's office, and he's pleasantly surprised and happy because she finished her work well. He tells her he will send her new tasks via email. Later, Song's friend Joe visits Wen's mother, who is very happy to see her and takes her to the market. Joe's grandmother calls Chang, telling him that Joe is trying to arrange a marriage for her. Meanwhile, Wen receives a message from his former girlfriend, Zhang, telling him that she wants to meet him on New Year's Eve. Wen also gets a call from Song, who informs him that she visited his mother and wants him to know that she loves him. If he doesn't love her, he needs to let her know so she doesn't get her hopes up. Song meets Wen in the library, thinking that their relationship is good, and gives him food. She asks about his meeting with his mother, but Wen tells her that it doesn't matter if she loves him. He doesn't want to love anyone, and asks her not to come to him again. We then see Chang on a date with Song. He even picks her up when she says her feet hurt from walking, and she's happy. Suddenly, they find someone crying and saying that they lost their love. She then goes to eat, not stopping from sadness. However, Chang and Song don't leave her and try to help her meet Wen on New Year's Eve. Chang drops Song off at work, and they plan how they'll spend New Year's Eve. Song wants to ride a bike, but when a woman falls in front of the car, they rush to help her. They gather the papers, and the woman asks about the cost of the case when she learns that Song is a lawyer. She gives Song her card in case she needs anything later. Chang arrives with the bike, and Chang takes it from him to try to teach her how to ride it. Then we see Song entering Chang's office and giving him a New Year's gift after organizing his work files. Chang plans to take her out that night to give her a gift, but she refuses and says she wants to go out with her friends instead. Chang agrees that she can finish her work and leave early. Song sends a message to Chang, who is trying to learn how to ride the bike, but he struggles to stop it and ends up bumping into Chang, who's napping in the garden and gets upset about his bike getting damaged. After Song leaves work, she gets a call from the woman who needs help with her case. She takes her to Chang, and after hearing the issue, Chang refuses to help, saying there's no time and the outcome won't be good. But Song decides to help her anyway. They go to a restaurant where Song asks Chang to call the person they are meeting to confirm if they're coming on time. Chang responds that he's still thinking about it. Song gives her some hope, saying that he'll be a little late. Song calls Joe, letting her know she'll be a bit late and that she'll come right after finishing. Joe tells her to take her time, and she waits for Song to finish work before they celebrate New Year's together. Meanwhile, Chang goes to the office and is surprised to find that Song is still there, with work that she still needs to finish. He wonders why she hasn't gone out to celebrate with her friends. Song is shocked that he's the one telling her not to overwork herself. He then notices a paper on her desk about the case of the woman he refused to take, realizing that she wants to handle it. Suddenly he feels unwell, and Song rushes him to the hospital where he receives fluids. Song calls Joe to let her know what happened. Joe rushes to the hospital as soon as she hears Chang is sick, but she keeps talking non-stop, which irritates Song. She takes Joe aside and tells her to calm down. She also informs her about the medication and meal schedule. Joe calms down when she learns that Song has a boyfriend. Meanwhile, Mr. Chang is hesitating and thinking about helping Song with the case. Song waits for him outside the hospital and he's on his way to meet her, but the roads are busy. At midnight, he's still on his way. Meanwhile, Jong is waiting for one at the restaurant mentioned in the message, but when she realizes he's not there, she heads to Joe's restaurant instead. She doesn't find him there either. Finally, Chong arrives to meet Song, and they both wish each other a happy new year. He then takes her out to eat, and Song apologizes for not being able to spend the day with him due to work. We return to Jong, who orders food and sits with Joe. They start chatting and realize they're both in the same restaurant they went to in Australia. They even had the same meal, though it was their first time meeting in the restaurant. After finishing, Joe leaves some money and heads out when she hears that Wen is opening his office. She follows him and is shocked to see him standing with Jang. She then realizes that Jang is his ex-girlfriend. Wen tells Jang that he loves someone else and then locks the office door behind her. Next, we see Chang leaving his apartment and finding that Song has left breakfast at the door so he can sleep peacefully. He calls her, and they agree to go out together at night and visit the supermarket. Song waits for the woman with the case at a restaurant. When the woman arrives, she apologizes for the delay and expresses her fears that the case won't succeed. She's worried about hiring a lawyer, as she might lose money and the case might not work out. Mr. Chang suddenly enters and is pleased that he will help with the case. He asks the woman to gather all the people she knows who have the same problem so that he can help them and gather as much information as possible about the case. Juan and his father go to the library, but when they find it closed, they head to Joe's restaurant. His mother introduces his father to Joe, and he seems pleased with her. While they're talking, Chung overhears them and approaches, but there's tension between him and his father since he doesn't want to get married. His father asks him if he still thinks about his ex-girlfriend, and Chung gets angry. His father stands up to hit him, but his mother stops him and tells him that he does love her. His father calms down and sits. Back at Song's place, she is surprised at how Mr. Chang found her. He tells her that he knew from the case she posted. He wants to know why she abandoned the case, and she explains her perspective, saying that they are young with a future ahead of them, and she doesn't want their lives to be ruined. Chang agrees with her point of view. Meanwhile, Juan is sitting in front of his library, and Joe brings him a drink, sitting beside him, advising him not to dwell on what happened this morning. We see Chang waiting for Song, but it's raining. He runs to buy an umbrella, and as soon as she gets off the bus, he holds the umbrella over her, They go to the supermarket together. He drops her off at home. She's happy that Chang is always supportive of her. Chang then drops Song off at her house and heads to the hospital, where it's a difficult night for him and the medical team due to the heavy workload. After he finishes a surgery, he's exhausted and leaning against the wall. Chang takes a picture of him without his noticing and sends it to Song, joking that her boyfriend is getting old. When Chang goes to take him for an emergency, he tries to hide his phone, but Chang notices and grabs it, seeing the message from Song. That night, Song is asleep holding her phone, and Chang calls her in a video call from the hospital. She sees that his hand is swollen from all the surgery. The next day, Song is preparing her papers, always in a hurry. When she leaves, she finds Chang standing in front of her apartment, looking very tired. She gives him peppermint when she learns he hasn't eaten and his blood sugar is low. She takes him inside, grabs a thermometer, and when she returns, she finds him asleep. He wakes up to find her covering him. She checks his temperature and finds he has a fever. He doesn't want her to go to work, but tells her to go while she applies cream to his red hand and tells him she'll take the day off tomorrow to make him chicken soup. She says goodbye and leaves. On her way to work, she calls him to remind him to take care of himself. When she sees him walking, she thinks he's heading to Jang, but he reassures her that he's just tired. She feels relieved that he's not lying to her. Joe sends food to Jang at his company, but doesn't know it's for him. Joe wants to leave, but Jang stops her and notices that she's acting differently. When Jang asks about her boyfriend, Joe admits that she's his girlfriend and that they're planning to get married. Jang doesn't believe her and tells her to call him. If he loves her, he will come. Meanwhile, Juan is with Chang and tells him that Jang has returned. Chang asks him who he will choose, but Juan says he will choose Chang. Joe then calls Chang, saying she had an accident. Chang leaves immediately and takes his car to reach her. When he arrives, he's worried about her, but he gets angry when he finds out she lied to him. She calls him, wanting him to know that she doesn't love him, but he's furious and walks away. We return to Chang and Song, who are at the restaurant waiting for Xiao, the woman with the case. She has gathered all the people she knows who have the same problem. After they finish, the woman who admires Chang calls to check on him and asks Song to buy him porridge. However, Song doesn't agree with this. When Chang tells Song that if she doesn't do what he asked, he will call her, Song agrees and goes to buy it. However, she drops her scarf and asks him to take a break. Song calls to check on Chang, but he tells her to check on Joe because she hasn't opened her shop. When Song calls Joe, she finds her crying in the street, but Joe lies, saying she's going home. Song then informs her that Juan is asking about her. Song spends the whole night next to the soup pot, falling asleep on her own. The next day, Chang comes to check on Chang and brings them a gift. However, he gets angry and jealous when he finds out that Mr. Chang sent the gift to Song. When Song brings the soup to Chang and tries to feed him, he refuses to take it and wants to know why she sent him a gift. She tells him that she bought him porridge yesterday because he was feeling unwell. He gets angry at her, and she is upset because he doesn't trust her, so she leaves. However, Chang calms down and says that he misunderstood her. Chang then admits that he's jealous of her. Chang leaves for a conference, and Chang hands him something with him. Song goes to take the gift from Chang, irritated. Meanwhile, Song regrets taking a break and sends a message to Chang, canceling her leave. Chang is angry but drinks the soup she made for him. Song arrives, and Chang is eating. He asks her to eat with him and notices that she's waiting for a call. However, when Chang calls, she refuses to answer. Chang's first day at work with Mr. Chang, she asks Song to give her the files. Song goes to the supermarket to buy a few items. Later, she takes a picture and posts it as a status to tease Chang. They respond to each other with statuses, and she's upset that he didn't send her a message. Meanwhile, the dog seems upset, sensing Chang's mood. Chang tells the dog that he'll find time to apologize to her. The next day at the hospital, Chang has his breakfast and sits with Chang. He tells him that Song cried all night, which makes Chang realize that Chang is lying to him. They make a plan for Song to return to him. Chang calls Song to inform her that his birthday is tomorrow, but she doesn't suspect that it's part of Chang's plan. Chang tells her no, and when she goes to see Song, she learns that Chang will be there. She pretends not to care about him and welcomes Chang's friends. Chang feels upset because she doesn't sit next to him or talk to him, so he asks Chang to order the same food that Song likes. But when Song gets a call, she has to leave and leaves her wallet with Chang because the meal will be on her. When Chang returns, angry, he knocks on Song's door but doesn't find her. He learns from Chang that she's with Joe at the hotel. He calls Joe to talk to Song, but she refuses to talk to him. When she finally picks up, he doesn't say anything important and tells her they'll talk when she returns. The dog gives him the wallet, and Chang ties it to the dog's hair and takes a picture to post. When Song tells Joe what happened, Joe says that Chang has feelings for her and wants her to be with him all the time. She's happy for Song and hugs her. telling her that she should return the gift to Chang. Zhang knows that she and her boyfriend are upset with each other, and she says she knows from the status Song posted. When Chang arrives at the office, Sheng goes to give him the files. She also informs him that Song loves him and that Chang, the doctor, is in love with her. He's surprised. Meanwhile, Song is back, eavesdropping by Chang's door, hoping to hear his voice. But instead, she finds him coming out of the elevator with the dog. He informs her that Chang's hand is injured, which is why he's in the quarantine room at the hospital. He asks Wan if she's not busy to take care of the dog since he has his friend's bachelor party and won't be able to feed it. He also asks her why she hasn't opened her shop for 2 days. She explains that she's been helping out at a hotel with party food. She enters the apartment and starts organizing the books. Then she calls Chang to check on Chang. He tells her that after the surgery, they discovered the patient has a chronic illness, so they put Chang in a quarantine room under observation. He also mentions that Chang's mood was bad, which is why his wound hurts. Next, we go to the bachelor party, where she's in charge of the food. Someone asks her why she's avoiding him, and she tells him she's forgotten everything that happened. His friends arrive to take him, and he keeps looking at her throughout the time. When Zhang arrives, he tries to leave, but his friends stop him. Zhou burns her hand. His friends ask him to play music while Zhang sings. They convince him with difficulty. Zhang tries to apologize to him in front of everyone, asking for another chance. She tries to get closer to him, but he pushes her away. We see her crying and drinking more. She runs away, and he takes her after she drinks a lot to get her home. But Zhou speaks while not fully conscious and says that she never loved anyone other than him. He asks her not to cry. Song arrives and gives her a drink to sober her up, but Zhou still thinks she's with Zhang and continues crying. Song tries to calm her down and calls Chang, but his phone is off. She then calls Chang, who tells her that Chang's condition is not good and that she needs to go see him. When she arrives, no one wants to let her in. Dr. Chang helps her enter and pretends to be angry at Song, telling her that Chang's condition is critical. Song enters to find him asleep and holds his hand. When Chang tells her not to cry, Chang wakes up, startled, and reassures her. Song yells at Chang for lying to her, and she's upset with Chang for lying as well, but he did it because he couldn't reach her. He then apologizes for getting angry and upsetting her. Song tells him that there's nothing between her and Chang. Chang returns her wallet and tells her he bought a new bike with the money because Chang broke his bike. He shows her a video of Chang struggling to ride the bike and falling off. We then see Chang learning to ride the bike with Song. They take a bike ride together, happy and enjoying themselves. Song admits for the first time that she loves him, but when he asks her to say it again, she doesn't agree. The next day, Song makes him breakfast and goes to open his apartment, but when she sees him not dressed, she gets embarrassed and turns her face. When he changes the password to his apartment door so she can't enter at the wrong time, she doesn't agree. He tells her that anytime she's upset with him, she can come in and tell him what's bothering her. Song tells him that the password to her apartment door is his birthday. They are interrupted by the sound of Zhou screaming because her legs were injured and her condition is bad from the distress. She has breakfast and leaves. Song tells Chang that this is the first time Zhou hasn't shown her emotions. She tries to laugh despite her sadness because it's clear that she's very attached to Wang. Song asks him not to show himself in front of her anymore. Song then tells Chang that they need to meet Xiao at 2 o'clock, and she gives him the gift that he sent her because she can't accept such an expensive gift. Chang tells her to consider it compensation for the scarf he ruined, but Song tells him that if he wants to make it up to her, he can send her an envelope with money, and he agrees. When Chang meets Xiao with Song, he informs her that they will ask her some questions in court, and she's anxious. She asks Song to be present during the session. Chang encourages her, saying she needs to have courage. When Song asks him to go to court with her, he agrees. He also recommends her at the meeting to be responsible for the online loan case in court, and the meeting members agree. Song thanks him and says she will work harder on herself. At that moment, Chang calls her while she's with Song. She asks for permission to step aside and talk to him, telling him that she's going to court and is very happy about it. Chang comes from behind her and sees her laughing with Song, which makes him upset. Song agrees with Chang to go out and eat, and his friends arrive. When they find out, they suggest that they all go together. Chang goes up to the roof, thinking to himself, wondering whether to give up or stay determined after he learned that she loves him. Later, Song and Chang book a restaurant and arrive before their friends. On their way, they meet the family of a patient who's at the hospital. They get into an argument because the patient's father was transferred to intensive care, and his condition worsened. Despite that, they're going out to eat and leaving him behind. By coincidence, Chang arrives and runs to calm them down. One of the patient's family members says that his hands were injured and they want compensation, as well as an apology from his friends. Chang refuses when he finds that his friends are also injured and tells the family there is no money, and if they want to complain, they should go to the police. The police arrive and arrest them. Song is startled because his hand is injured. When the officer learns she's a lawyer, he asks to speak with her privately. She pays the fine for them and they leave. When they get home, she gives them a first aid kit for their injuries and prepares food for them. She asks him why he's not feeling well, and he tells her that having her around helps ease his stress. Song is happy to see that Chang has prepared her favorite meal. Afterward, Chang sits with the trainees to teach them professional ethics, and Song takes a photo of him with them. Later, Song helps clean Chang's injury, and Chang tells her the story of his life and why he became a doctor, as well as what he learned from his grandfather. We then see Zhang running to catch up after leaving her friend's wedding. She wants to introduce him to wealthy businessmen so that his book can be sold in large bookstores. She tells him that it's an opportunity he shouldn't miss, but Wen tells her he doesn't agree. She thinks he's doing this because of Zhou. He walks away and leaves her behind. Wen watches Zhou's videos and thinks about her. When he goes to the hotel to see her, he finds that she's not interested in him and is playing with the children. He thinks she's happy, but Zhou sits and cries, remembering her good memories with him. We return to Song, who arrives at work in the morning by car. Chang tells her it's a nice feeling and wishes it could be like this every day. She reassures him about the injury to his hand and tells him not to overwork himself. At the hospital, he hears the news about what happened to him. Chang informs him that the patient's family contacted the media. When he goes to see the manager scolds him and says that if his hand had been broken, it would have affected his career, and they would have stopped work for a month. His friends are upset that he's being punished alone. Before he leaves, he writes down important points for them to remember about everything they need to be cautious about. Song returns early when she finds out that Chang has been suspended from work. She's upset because of him, but he tells her he's not mad. They might also consider it a vacation, and he wants to spend it with her. Meanwhile, Zhou is packing her things to leave and looks at the place where Wen was singing. She imagines him singing and starts to cry. At that moment, Wen is running, sitting down to rest and thinking about Zhou. When he goes to see her, he finds that she's already in a taxi and leaving. Song sends Zhou a message to check on her. Zhou replies that she's finished her work and is on her way home. Zhou meets her father and he asks her to come back home. However, she wants to rely on herself and open her own independent shop. Her father believes this is difficult, but assures her that he and her mother support her. We see Chang waking up in the morning and preparing breakfast for Song. He also packs lunch and dinner for her in a bag. Song is happy about his attention to her. Later, he takes her to work. As he walks away, he keeps thinking. He answers a call from someone he knows, and they tell him that they've set a place for his reading session. He says he'll confirm and get back to them. Wen goes to return the guitar that Zhang had given him as a gift. He ends things with her and tells her that his feelings for her mean nothing. Zhang tries to get back together with him, but Wen tells her that choosing each other in the first place was a mistake. He then goes to buy a gift for Zhou and hopes that she'll like it. Meanwhile, Song is watching court videos and goes to deliver the file to Chang. However, he makes some adjustments to the points and tells her to rest well before the court session. After Zhou finishes gathering her things at the shop, she looks at Wen's shop door and the memories they shared. As she's about to leave, Wen arrives to give her the gift. She's surprised to see that she's renting out the shop. When she opens the gift, she gives him his book back and says it's no longer of any use to her, then says goodbye. We go to Chang, who is cleaning the house. After finishing, he prepares food and decorates it. He realizes he's done everything and is sitting idle. He calls his uncle, who asks if he's busy. Chang says yes, but adds that his uncle should come and try the food he made. His uncle tells him he's sure Chang is upset and that he can listen if he wants to talk. But his uncle suddenly ends the call, and Chang is shocked. Later, Chang pulls out his tools and starts designing things, feeling like time is passing slowly. He mentions that the trainees probably don't see any work being done because their supervisor isn't around, but when he calls one of them, there's an emergency. Chang asks him a question, and when he answers, Chang says that he's on vacation and wonders why Chang is asking him at that time. Chang apologizes and says he'll call him back later. Chang thinks that he's avoiding him. When Chang calls Chang again, he tells him it was a wrong call and that there's an accident with many injuries. Chang ends the call and starts working with his tools. Meanwhile, Song returns from work and calls Chang, but he doesn't answer. She thinks he must have fallen asleep. When she arrives home, Chang calls her and asks about Chang because he's usually busy, but now he's alone, and that will likely affect him. He suggests that she take him somewhere to help him out of the situation. After she ends the call, her mother calls to tell her that her father, Jiang, wants to meet Chang and get to know him. Song says she's busy and won't be able to go. Her mother tells her that if she doesn't agree to visit them, they will come to her. Song quickly agrees with a smile. When Song tries to cover Chang, he wakes up. She tells him that she knows where they're going. On the plane, Song tells him that they're going to her house and shows him a picture of her family. She talks to him about their relationship and the memories they share with her family. She also tells him that her stepfather treats her well, even though she initially treated him badly, but he managed to make her love him with his care, like he would for his own daughter. She's happy that he treats her mother well. When they arrive at the university, Chang is surprised to see her house there. She tells him that Jiang, her father, is a university professor. That's why they live in teacher's accommodation. Chang asks her to show him around the university and the place where she studied. They tour the campus, and she tells him that some guys used to bring her flowers and ask her to go out with them. Chang shares stories about the girls as well, mentioning how they would get jealous of each other. They arrive at Jiang, who is digging in the ground. When he meets Chang, they both praise each other. Song asks him what he's doing, and he tells her that he is digging up a bottle of wine that he buried the day he married her mother. When she asks him why, Chang explains that it's a tradition in their family. The meaning of bringing it out is that their daughter is going to get married. However, Song points out that she is not married yet. When they reach the house, Chang starts cooking. Jiang calls him a skilled chef, better than Song. They all sit down to eat, and Song's mother offers Chang chopsticks, welcoming him as a new member of the family. He accepts them, happy. He tries to offer drinks to Chang, but Song refuses, saying they shouldn't drink too much since they have work in the morning. However, Chang insists on drinking to prove that he deserves Song. After dinner, Chang goes outside to talk to Jiang. Jiang asks him to take care of Song, and Chang tells him that he can't imagine life without her and won't leave her. Jiang reassures him that Chang will love and protect Song, and Chang leaves. Song checks on Chang, who is not fully conscious. She helps him to his room, but he enters and tells her that he promised her father he would stay by her side and never leave her. They are then joined by her mother, and he explains that Song was a little tired and he was just helping her home. Song tells them that she will go for a walk and will be fine. They spend time there, enjoying each other's company. However, on the flight back, Song receives a call informing her that the patient she hit has filed a lawsuit against the hospital. She's shocked. Then, she receives a call from her grandmother, who insists that Chang must come to see her. When Chang arrives, he talks to his father, who has learned about the case. His father asks if he's okay and how the hospital got involved. Chang tells him that he was injured slightly and that the hospital has suspended him and transferred him for investigation, though he doesn't know how long it will last. His father tells him that, as a father and someone older, he wouldn't encourage him to get into fights, but as a doctor, he doesn't believe Chang did anything wrong. He also reminds him that their family is well known and always under scrutiny. He apologizes to Chang for his rash behavior. As Chang leaves, his grandmother sends him food, which he shares with Song. She asks him to thank his grandmother for her kindness. While they are talking, Chang wipes the food from Song's hair, and she is pleased by his attention to her. Later, Song offers to have her law firm handle his case, and he agrees. He tries to call Chung to apologize to Song, but when he calls, Chung apologizes for the fight, mentioning a meeting about the case. However, they didn't specify whether he should return to work or not. Chang ends the call, frustrated. Song sees him upset and reassures him that she won't let anything harm him. The next day, Song goes to work and asks Chang's lawyer for help. However, he refuses because the assault was intentional and there's no chance of winning the case. He tells her not to focus only on her own interests. When Chang enters his office, he asks her to focus on her own case, then admits that he likes her, and she tries to help him. He agrees but asks her to focus on her case first. Chang then visits the hospital and meets with his students who encourage him, saying they're waiting for him. A message arrives for Chang, asking him to go to the law office. At the office, the receptionist asks if he has an appointment. Song tells her she's with him and takes him to Chang. After introducing them, Chang thanks him for agreeing to help. The lawyer asks Chang to explain what happened, and Chang tells him all the details. After Chang finishes, as he's leaving, the lawyer notices Song walking into the office to see Chang and is visibly upset. Song asks Chang to sign the power of attorney, but the amount isn't written. When Chang asks her, she wonders if it's because she's upset and wants to write an amount that would make him lose everything. Chang then asks if she'd still stay with him if he loses the case and can no longer be a doctor. Song tells him that she has always taken care of the people she loves and that he will return to his job and she will stay by his side. When he tries to get closer to her, they both receive calls at the same time. We then switch to Chang sitting with Wan, who tells him that if he loves Cho, he should confess to her. Juan says that he didn't try to change himself because of his old love or the new one. After that, Juan leaves and Song arrives with her. She says goodbye to her, but Cho sees Juan as she's walking and calls him over. It turns out that someone has stolen his bicycle. She offers to drive him and they ride together. Juan recalls Chang's words that he needs to start acting, so he tries to confess to Cho, but she interrupts him. She tells him there was a misunderstanding with her ex-boyfriend, so maybe he could apologize on his behalf. Juan feels upset and asks her to stop the car, getting out. He's frustrated because he can't bring himself to confess to her. When he returns to his office, he keeps staring at the gift he was going to give Cho, but then a man shows up and argues with him. This man is the one who will buy Cho's restaurant and wants to shut the door. He also knocks over the small bookshelf, breaking the gift. The man gets scared and leaves, and Juan is left upset over the broken gift. Meanwhile, Cho is feeling down and deletes Juan's number, but is unable to do it. She receives a call from the person who's renting her place, saying that a strange man is preventing them from working and has had an argument with him. She goes to check on him. When she arrives, she finds Juan injured. She insists on taking him to the hospital, but he tells her it's not necessary because no one is concerned about him. He asks her to break up with her boyfriend since he allowed her to go out alone at night. When she helps him inside, he asks her if her boyfriend treats her well. She says yes, and that she cares for him, which is why she didn't ask him to drive her home. Later, she goes to get treatment for Juan's injuries and tells him to treat himself. She tells him that if the man wants to close the door, it's fine. She leaves him and goes. Juan feels hurt because the door no longer reminds her of him. Next, we switch to Song, who is sitting with the family of the patient for the case. They're demanding a large amount of money, and the man makes Song fall, injuring her hand. Her colleagues take her to the hospital and Chang is informed. He arrives quickly, and Song tells him she just fell, but her friend explains what happened. Chang looks at the x-ray and says she needs a cast. He takes her to the clinic to do it himself, but Song is reluctant because he's not Dr. Azam. Afterward, Song's cousin tells Chang that ever since Song met him, she's always been injured. He says that if Chang had a girlfriend, he would have taken better care of her. Chang feels sad because what his cousin said is true, but Song tells him that it has nothing to do with her. Chang apologizes for not being able to protect her and asks her not to continue with the case. Song, however, is determined, and Chang thanks her. When they return home, Chang prepares food for Song, but Chang finishes it all. Chang tells him that he has studying to do and needs to review now. Song doesn't want Chang to leave because Chang will stay with her and not leave her, but Chang is afraid of Chang and leaves. Song tries to tell Chang that she won't need him and that she can take care of herself, but she can't eat alone and gives in, letting him help her. While she's in the bathroom trying to dry her hair and tie her clothes, she struggles and can't manage. Chang waits for her outside. When she comes out and he sees her, Chang helps her tie her clothes. After he finishes, Song goes back inside to dry her hair. Chang helps her when he finds she's unable to. Song asks where Chang will sleep and he tells her on the couch. She suggests he sleep in the guest room, but Chang says he won't be close to her and won't be able to hear her. She sends him out so she can sleep, but she wakes up in pain at night and can't reach her medicine. Chang hears her and asks if he can come in. She lets him. When he checks her cast, there's no problem, but she's in pain from the fracture. He gives her painkillers and goes to get her some water. When she follows him out and sees how he heats the water, it reminds her of her father. She tells Chang that her father used to warm the water for her in the same way. Chang tells her that she should choose a person like her father. Song says that Chang has many of her father's qualities. Later, she takes her medicine and returns to her room. Chang is by her side, and she notices burns on his fingers. She asks him about them, and he tells her that he was nervous when he found out she was injured, so he burned himself while preparing the cast. He says that when she got injured on her head the last time, he was nervous in the same way. He discovered that he becomes fearful when she's around because he's scared for her and hopes she stays safe. The next day, she's asked by her colleagues who tied her clothes, and it's clear it was Chang because the knot looks like a surgical knot. They ask Song if they've become close, but when she explains nothing happened between them, Cho doesn't believe her. Later, Cho sees Song getting ready to go to work and tells her that she's still in pain and should take a break, but Song insists she hasn't finished her case. The deadline is approaching and she needs to continue working. Song asks Cho to untie her clothes because she can't move with them on. When Cho unties it, they find that Chang has written something on it, and Song doesn't know when he wrote it. Meanwhile, Chang is requested by the hospital to help with diagnosing a case. As he leaves, he encounters the people who filed a lawsuit against him. He asks to speak with them and shows them the x-ray of Song's injury and tells them that he won't file a lawsuit. He just wants them to stop hurting Song because they're upset with him. We then return to Song, who tells Chang she fell from the stairs, but Chang doesn't believe her and tells her to focus on her case. He asks her to hand over her case to her friend, Jing. Song tries to argue, but Chang is determined. She leaves to inform her friend of the decision, and her friend is happy. But Song asks her to keep her updated on the case's progress. Meanwhile, Wan is at the club and notices that Cho hasn't sent him any message. He overhears someone passing by saying, "Sorry, it was sent by mistake," while holding a phone. He brushes it off and sends a message to Cho, then deletes it. He tells her that the message was sent by mistake, and she replies with, "Okay." Wan sends Cho a message asking if she's had breakfast, but she doesn't reply. When he tries to practice, he gets distracted and can't continue. He then checks his phone and sees a post from Cho announcing her engagement, along with a picture of her with someone. Wan gets upset and calls Chang, who confirms that Cho is getting married and says the person she's marrying is suitable. Wan returns home feeling down but sees a man building a fence. He stops him and argues, refusing to let him take the land from Cho. The man then calls Cho, and when she arrives, he tells her he didn't know there was a crazy neighbor nearby. Wan keeps acting wildly, scaring the man and causing him to cancel the contract. When Cho tells him that she's already started the preparations and paid the money, and she can't refund it, he offers to pay her double the amount. She agrees, and when she asks why he keeps making her come there, he says it's because he likes seeing her. He then tells her that he wonders how she loved him in one moment and forgot him in the next. He also asks how she decided so quickly to marry because of his post. She explains that the picture was photoshopped and says she regrets loving him before, then walks away. However, he stops her and confesses his love, asking her to be with him. They then recall their memories together and go to another place. Back with Song, Chang tells her to go out and eat, but she says she already ate and her stomach is making noise, revealing she's hungry. They talk while eating, and Chang tells her he loves her. Song stands up and asks him to turn on the internet connection. When she sees the network name, she translates it, and it turns out to say, Song is his girlfriend and wife. When she translates the number of the network, it's the same phrase. Song is happy to hear that he loves her. Then she receives a call from Jing, who tells her that someone filmed the entire fight. Song gathers the information and eventually tracks down the person's car number. She arranges to meet him, but he says he's traveling and can meet her the next day. Meanwhile, her first case discussion is approaching. Song meets Jing, who offers to handle the case in her place so that Song can travel. She agrees. The next day, Jing tells Chang about Song's decision, and he feels upset. He calls Song, and she tells him she's made her decision and is happy with what she's learned from him. She doesn't need to defend him. Chang goes to see Chang to tell him that Song's dream is to defend him in her first case, in exchange for proving his innocence. Chang follows her to the airport and calls her, asking to take her with him. He tells her she can't give up on her dream for him, and that he'll give them the money they ask for. But Song explains that this would prove he's guilty and damage his career. She won't allow anyone she loves to get hurt. Chang says goodbye and attends the session where Song was supposed to defend him. He imagines her in Jing's place, and they succeed in the case. Song is able to win and presents it to the plaintiffs. She also tells them that she could file a lawsuit against them for starting the fight and asks them to respect doctors. Later, she goes to remove her cast, and when Chang sees Chang gently removing it, he suddenly tears it off and walks away with the cast. Chang follows him and finds him taking Chang's signature. However, when they touch Chang, the cast breaks. Afterward, Chang takes Song to a clothing store to buy her new clothes to celebrate the removal of her cast. He picks out clothes for her, and she tries them on, happy. Then he walks with her to work. When they arrive with Jing and see each other, Chung seems upset about their closeness. That night, after Song finishes writing her memories, she receives a call saying that the plaintiffs have withdrawn the case and that Chang is returning to his work. Song is happy. At the same time, Chang receives the same call and he's informed that he will resume work starting the next day. He calls Song to thank her and she suggests they invite their friends. The next day, they go out with Cho and Chong. When Chong tells Cho that they will be together, she responds that she's just one person. Wan arrives and Chong suggests they all go together. However, Wan stands by Cho and tells her he will be with her. The five of them leave together, but Chong talks to Song while Cho talks to Wan, and they both ignore Chong. Chong then asks for a teddy bear and sits it next to him. Wan and Chang get up to grab some food, but when they return, Wan doesn't bring anything for Cho. She's upset because he should have known what she likes. She then goes to get food for herself and tells Juan that he needs to learn what she likes so he can get it for her next time. Juan asks for the ingredients, and when she tries to drink, he stops her and suggests she drink tea instead. Cho is annoyed with him. When they leave, Cho gives Juan the ingredients and shows him a list of things the girl likes, explaining that his age is different from hers. Juan is surprised by the requests, and Cho becomes upset and leaves. Juan follows her and manages to make up with her. We then switch back to Chang, walking with Song and telling her that he encountered a problem at work, but she was able to protect him without hesitation. He also hopes they can stay together and protect their children this way. When Song reflects on his words, they exchange messages. Song checks the time and realizes it's still early, so she goes to Chang's house and tells him she has insomnia. He plays music for her and gives her a massage until she falls asleep. The next day, Song wakes up in Chang's room and quickly runs away, but Chang sees her and tells her to change and have breakfast with him. When she opens the door, she finds Chang's students, led by Chang, waiting to surprise her. They ask if she's feeling better, and she tells them that the water had been cut off, and she was asking Chang if it had been cut off at his place. She leaves, and as soon as she closes her door, she feels embarrassed and worried that someone might talk about them at the hospital. She goes to prepare for work, and when she sees they've left, goes out to argue with Chang, accusing him of putting her in this awkward situation on purpose. They argue, and then they encounter Chang, who is in front of them. They take the elevator and find Chang, who tells Chang that he's never seen anything like this. He's lived with her since childhood and knows everything about her, so he takes Chang aside to talk. Next, we see Juan meeting Cho with a sandwich and a bouquet of flowers. He tells her that they're going to play together, but as they climb the mountain, Cho seems upset. When they sit down, Cho tells him she's different from him, and the opposite of him in everything. She asks if he's thought carefully about their relationship. Juan tells her that when he's with her, he feels at ease and that she is unique to him. Meanwhile, Chang picks up Song from work and they go to watch a movie. However, he gets a call from the hospital and has to leave. When he arrives, there's been an earthquake, and they need a medical team to treat the injured. Chang says he'll go since he just returned from vacation and still has energy. Chang and another person will go with him. Chang calls Song and tells her that he'll go with Chang to the earthquake site. Song asks when they're leaving and gets ready the clothes for Chang. When Song arrives and meets Chang, she asks about Chang, but Chang seems reluctant to say goodbye to her. He reassures her that he will take care of him, but Song says she's more worried about Chang. She asks him to take care of himself, to send her a message every day, and to let her know if something happens, as she's unsure if he will return. He tells her to wait for him. Meanwhile, Juan wakes up and doesn't find Cho. When he looks for her, he finds her sitting gathering dewdrops. He moves the tree so the drops fall faster. Cho gets upset and leaves, but she trips, and Juan catches her. He tells her she needs to rest because her eyes look dull. She agrees. Later, when she wakes up, she remembers that she spilled the water she had gathered, and she feels sad. Juan tells her that he was joking with her and explains that dewdrops aren't drinkable because they are contaminated. He then suggests places they can visit together. Cho gets a call saying Chang is going to the earthquake site. We return to Song, who keeps following the news, and receives a message from Chang saying that he's busy treating people. Song gets upset because he hasn't slept. While she's at work, she hears someone say that their family is at the earthquake site and that the situation is serious. The next day, Song submits a vacation request because she volunteered to join the rescue team, and she got accepted. Chang is upset and tells her that she doesn't care about her own life. She explains that she wants to be close to him. He agrees to her leave request and tells her to come back safe. When she goes to prepare her bag, Song goes to help her. But when she wakes up the next day, she finds that Song has left. She arrives at the earthquake site and begins helping people. Chang is already involved in the operation when another earthquake occurs. However, he manages to control the situation and the operation is successful. When Song reaches the convoy's location, she is on the bus. But they don't see each other. As soon as she gets off, another earthquake happens. A woman asks for help, and Song runs with her. She manages to locate a child, and as she goes out to request assistance, she meets Chang and is happy to see him. She tells him about the child, and they manage to get the child out. The child is diagnosed with an injury caused by the roof collapsing. Song tries to protect the child, but ends up falling onto him. She gets worried, but Chang tells her that they need to get the child out quickly. When he hands the child over to the paramedics, he asks her when she'll leave. She replies that she doesn't know, and they hear someone calling for a doctor. Chang tells her to wait for him at the same place after the operation, and he says there are things he wants to tell her. As he leaves, Song receives a message saying they will stay the night at the location due to road issues. Song stays awake, waiting for Chang. The weather turns cold, and it starts snowing. She eventually meets Chang. They get into a car, and he hands her 3 letters, but there's nothing written on them. When he exits the car, she discovers that the letters have invisible ink, and he confesses his love for her from elementary school through university until now. He asks her to marry him. Then he gets back into the car and says he's waiting for her response and that she should take her time to think about it. Song receives another message saying the road is fixed and they can leave. They say their goodbyes and she walks away. After the earthquake ends, they hold a conference to thank Chang and his team. When they return, Song is waiting for him. He arrives and gives her a gift, a photo, because she helped him and didn't tell his mother when he was at the earthquake site. Song then walks with Chang, who asks if the photo is more beautiful than him, because she keeps looking at it. When he tries to get closer to her, Wan and Chang interrupt them to retrieve their dog. They return to the house, but Song tells Chang that they should go inside her house, leaving Wan to enter his own house. When they enter, they find Cho has prepared a surprise for Song and is at the house because she had been concerned about him during his absence. When Cho sees them, she leaves. She comes back with them to let them know they're leaving. As they descend, Cho is happy about Song and Chang's relationship, and Chang tells her that they are one person and have confessed their love for each other. He adds that Cho hasn't yet confessed her love. Cho then tells him that she already confessed to him before, and they chase after each other. We return to Song, who is eating while Chang looks at her. He asks her to spend the new year with his family because they're returning from a trip, and he wants to introduce her to them. Song becomes nervous and asks if she's suitable and if they will accept her, wondering if she's beautiful enough. Chang reassures her that they will definitely accept her and that she's beautiful. Song calls her mother and tells her she won't be spending the new year with her. Her mother is happy and says she'll spend it at Chang's family's house, asking how their relationship is going and whether he has proposed yet. The day arrives when they meet Chang's family. They go together, choosing flowers and gifts they like. When they arrive at the house, Song feels anxious. Chang reassures her, telling her his family will love her. They meet his grandfather at the door and he introduces them to each other. Song presents the flowers to his grandmother, who tells her that she appreciates them because they are hard to find, and suggests that Song look for them to bring them again, proving that she cares. She then asks to meet Chang's grandfather, but he's busy playing with the dog and watching TV. When Song enters, Cho introduces herself as Song's friend. As they sit down, Chang tries to introduce Song, but his grandfather interrupts and says that she's the lawyer who defended him and also helped rescue the injured during the earthquake. He adds that Cho was the one who provided him with all the information. Then Chang gives her a gift from his family, which is an amber piece, and Song tells them its story. The grandfather is happy because it's a good souvenir. Afterward, they gather together to prepare their baked goods, and everyone is joyful. That night, Chang's family arrives and Chang goes out to greet them. They are all happy to see Song. While they're having dinner, the family mentions that they won't travel again and will return to the hospital to continue their work. Chang is shocked because they will continue to follow him there. The family laughs while enjoying the food. After dinner, Song goes outside to look at the stars, and Chang's mother gives her a coat. Song, thinking it's Chang, talks to her about the sky and the stars. When she realizes it's Chang's mother, they talk, and Song's mother is happy to know about Song's love for Chang and the memories they share. Then they watch the fireworks. Chang takes Song to his room to watch them more clearly. She tells him that his family loves her, and she loves them too, and he's wonderful. The next day, Song goes out and finds a bag, which she picks up. Inside it is the same shirt that got stained with oil, and Chang has decorated it with a flower. When she comes down, Chang tells her that she's a carnation, and he would like to have a child with her. They are interrupted by Chu, who is running after Woon, and they play together. Later, everyone gathers to say something to the grandparents for New Year. Each couple says their phrase, but Woon and Chu struggle to express themselves, so they beg the grandparents to give them a pass. Then, they sit together, and Chang tells them that he and Song have decided to have a child, and Song feels nervous. Chang adds that Song wants to get married first. They begin making hotel bookings and planning the wedding. When Chang goes to the hospital, he invites his colleagues and also gives Chang the message he thinks he missed, but Chang tells him to check the last page and that Chang was one of his students. Chang is thrilled and hugs him. We jump to the wedding day, and Chang prepares himself. Then he goes to Song to propose, and they take pictures. While in the hall, Song's legs hurt, so Chang makes her sit and massages her. The event coordinator comes in and tells them where to exit from, with Chang exiting first. Chang tells her he'll be ready. Song stands waiting for him, but Chu comes to tell her that Chang has left and is no longer in his spot. She calls Chong to ask, but he refuses to clarify, just saying Chong is not there. Song thinks he went to the hospital for a surgery. When the coordinator asks the couple to exit, Song goes out alone, and everyone is surprised. When the coordinator asks where the groom is, she tells him that he went to the hospital and asks for the microphone. She proudly says that Chang is always at the hospital, saving lives, even on his wedding day, when he got news of a patient in need, so he went to help. She doesn't mind waiting for him because he has waited for her for so long. Chong goes to find Chang, who is preparing a surprise for Song, but Song misunderstood Chong's words. When Chong apologizes, Chang thanks him for allowing him to hear what she said. Then a video plays with Chang singing to her, and he comes out to her. They reminisce about the memories they shared together. Everyone celebrates their love and claps for them. And with that, our drama series ends. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for our upcoming summaries, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Leave us a comment with the name of the show you'd like to see a summary of. Bye! Don't forget to subscribe for more. Check out more recaps you'll absolutely love right here.